What's up, everyone? It's your boy, Felix the Fox. And you ever tried to play through Celeste? Okay, so close. Nope, dang it. Almost had it. Nope, okay, that wasn't even close. Oh my god, just land it. Yes, I did it, or almost did it. Oh my god, I can do it. I can freaking. Oh my god, I did it. Yes, I did it. Oh, okay, we did it. Oh my god. Okay, next section. Yeah, definitely a roller coaster of an experience. And that was just one section of one level. There are so many things we could dissect about this indie game that I'd put more playtime hours into than any AAA title I've ever bought at this point, but I want to focus on the key elements that make up this game and how it pushes the player forward through its many challenges, whether that be through its great replayability, its emotional and motivating story, and its core design to be a challenging game. I want to start things off with its replayability. Celeste is a game that offers a pretty tough challenge with its base game alone, and then just brings on the heat once you unlock the rest of its content. The game directly shows the player almost the entire section of platforms they have to get through in order to progress to the next part. What makes this type of hard design so fun to play is how easy it is to restart and try again. The base theme of Celeste is to keep going, and the devs made sure the player had an easy experience when trying any section over again. As soon as you die, boom, you're back in. Almost less than a second until you can press forward again. This was crucial for the devs to pull off. Other franchises that offer a hard experience, such as the Souls games, tend to have quite the reset time when loading back in. You have to wait at least 5 seconds for the death menu, then the loading screen, and then you better hope you had a campfire near to where you died, or you gotta do a whole hike before you can take on that certain challenge or boss again. Or have to go through several different challenges again to get back to where you were. With Celeste, you are instantly back in the action, and every time the player reaches an end screen or the transition to the next section, the rush of dopamine you get is really insane. And after you finish a chapter, the calm, relaxing cutscene and chapter end screen you get is always a comforting feeling. Super important for keeping the player engaged with the challenge in front of them and immersed into Madeline's journey, which brings us to our next point, its emotional and motivating story. In a short surface level explanation, Celeste is about a girl named Madeline who wants to climb this mountain in order to conquer her fear of depression and anxiety. She learns that she has to love all parts of herself and accept help from others in order to reach the top. In a short summary of the meta sense for the player, the game is your mountain. You're the one trying to finish Celeste, and putting your head in your hands as you see a fail screen for the 500th time is the same as Madeline wishing she had just given up on this stupid dream of climbing the mountain. While Madeline herself is pushing through and reaching harder parts of the mountain, you, the player, also have to face tougher level design and tighten up on your skill level, or you will not make it either. But the game doesn't want you to give up or see this new challenge as something scary. As I discussed in a previous video, developers that make hard games tend to do it for a multitude of different reasons. The developers of Celeste not only made a difficult and challenging game, but they also handcrafted a story that perfectly suits every theme and aspect that is featured in this game. Madeline starts off her adventure being a little standoffish to the old lady she meets at the beginning of the game, later to be revealed as Granny. She is determined to climb this mountain, but doesn't want anyone to know the real reason why. I think this is like a perfect peek behind the curtain of the devs looking directly at the player. If you are new to challenging games where you have to trial and error a bit or really take in the level in front of you in order to figure out how to pass it, then maybe you started this adventure a little standoffish as well. I know I sure did. This was the first challenging game I had ever played besides a Souls game, and the thought of getting deeper into the game was making me a bit uneasy, especially seeing the gameplay of those later levels. I wasn't ready to accept the challenge that was in front of me, or understand what the challenge really was. During her climb to the peak, Madeline runs into a hipster from Seattle named Theo, and she sort of has the same reaction that she did to Granny earlier in the game. Even as the player, I was also a little put off when first introduced to this character. I thought this adventure was just me and Madeline, just me and this character going through levels together to reach the top of the mountain. Now I gotta take time out of my playthrough and help this guy just for some extra puzzles. Looking back now, I believe Theo was added for this very purpose. I wanted to do this adventure on my own without help, just like Madeline, and now I have to help this guy who just seems useless to my quest right now in this moment. But after helping Theo later on in the story, he helps Madeline through a panic attack by using a trick he learned from his grandfather, by breathing evenly to keep the feather afloat. This is where the game hits the next gear. Right after this, the gameplay directly afterwards has you using this exact feather to fly and boost to get across gaps you couldn't reach before. Like, it does not get better than this. You as the player cannot reach these next platforms unless you use the feather and master this new mechanic. And Madeline cannot further her adventure until she accepts help from Theo to get over her panic attack and continue up the mountain. And this is the type of double metaphor only gets better as you reach the end of the story. In Reflections, Madeline throws you back down to the bottom of the mountain, losing all of your progress. Yeah, I know. First time I saw that, I was pretty pissed too. But it's all just a massive build-up. The first boss fight you have in the game, you are running away from Madeline in this epic chase to reach the end of the chapter. But this time, in the final boss fight, you are the one chasing Madeline because Madeline has to accept all parts of herself. Madeline isn't evil. That's massively understating the character to me. She is the part of Madeline that Madeline hates the most, and you as the player hates the most because of the crap that she just pulled. But in the end, Madeline cannot finish her climb and completely conquer her quest until she fully accepts that this part of herself is still a part of her. Throughout the game, Madeline is trying to get rid of that part of herself entirely. It isn't until she reaches out to Madeline and tells her, let's work together. It's okay to be scared. And then everything comes full circle. They both have a really nice moment where they hug and you unlock the double dash, which is the only way you as the player can finish the game because you need it to access new areas you couldn't reach before. Like, this is incredible. If you don't believe that you could finish this game or get through its challenging moment, then this was the high reward. You and Madeline both did it. You did it together and you had help along the way. For every moment where you think you can't do one more challenging section, the game pushes you a little more and tells you that you can. It's right there. Just keep going because our character is going through the same thing you are, a challenge. And for some of us, our first one. And if you completed it, if you finish and proudly wear the badge of beating Celeste, then I promise you have this same feeling of, I want more. I could do more. I want a bigger challenge. And the game gives you one. Before we dive into the themes of chapters 8 and 9, as chapter 8 is set a year later after the main events of the game and doesn't add too much to the story, chapter 9 being a free update / DLC that was added later to the game that does expand upon the story and Madeline's arc as a whole, but it also really expands on the advanced mechanics in this game and then adds all sorts of new level design. So I want to keep with the base game for now, discussing the B-sides and C-sides. Every level in this game is handcrafted perfectly. Every single chapter is made to perfection. You can play this game with chapters 1 through 7 alone and have plenty of a challenge, but then the devs made those same chapters even harder, twice. The B and C sides are harder and often quicker versions of the original 8 chapters, giving the player more items to collect with tougher platforming sections spread throughout. These levels do not mess around, man. If you feel you mastered the story of this game, then go back through and find those tapes because they are so much fun and you will get better at the game. The main story is about pushing you to the end, and I am so glad these are here waiting for you whenever you want to take them on. I was itching to get my hands on more content for this game, so I immediately went to find every single one of these in the original chapters. It was so worth it. I mean, for the first couple hours, I couldn't even beat the B-side for this first chapter. It took me hours to finally give in and look up a walkthrough to get past certain sections. But once I got better at the game by putting more time in, I was flying through these B-sides until I went and tried to do the C-sides and was met with the same wall of difficulty and then was back to just square one trying to figure out these new tricky sections. I mean, how much harder could they make this game, really? And real quick, I want to talk about these B-sides and C-sides. One thing they did is they took the original music that was in the level and then they remixed it using other producers for other video games. And I thought that was really cool. And as a musician, as someone who loves music, I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. And so with that out of the way, I want to bring us to our next point, talking about chapters 8 and 9. The beginning of chapter 8 can be unlocked after collecting 4 crystal hearts, and this level offers a really tough challenge on its own, but for this video in particular, and fitting with the theme of motivating the player, I really just want to focus on chapter 9. Added as a free update, chapter 9 is about the death of the character Granny, who at this point, Madeline has grown very, very fond of. So learning about the news of her passing, Madeline starts to kind of be in denial about it, and now sees this bird as a part of Granny, and convinces herself that she must catch it. Madeline then returns and surprisingly is talking Madeline out of this and protests the whole idea, eventually abandoning Madeline. kind of switching roles as we saw in the original story, leading the player to lose the ability of the double dash. Later on, Madeline eventually corners the bird and Madeline comes back to talk her out of it once again, thus both freeing the bird and leading Madeline to wake up and have a conversation with Theo, learning that Granny and Theo's grandpa were actually at the mountain at the same time at some point. I personally thought this was a nice touch. The base game alone has a fantastic story, but I think Chapter 9 really comes in and puts a nice bow on everything, especially with the gameplay. Look, if you made it through Chapter 8 and every B-side and C-side and think you got this game down, think again, because Farewell is the hardest challenge you will face in this game. It's long, it's difficult, and you barely see any ground half the time, making any moment where you do have a chance to catch your breath make it all the more worth it. This chapter not only features new mechanics, but also really expands on older ones. The best part is that every single mechanic you learn, you could actually do at the very beginning of your playthrough. You just didn't know because the game didn't tell you. Now, I know that may not be true for everyone, but for me personally, this was very eye-opening to learn. Celeste is a difficult game on its own. And personally, if the story wasn't crafted the way it was by having the ultimate mirrored metaphor between the players and the characters, then I don't think it would have been the perfect storm that it was. But Celeste doesn't even need a great story to begin with because the gameplay and mechanics already do so much of the legwork for it. We were just blessed to receive a story as good as this one, a purposeful one. This game does not play around. It will be a challenge for those who want to face it, but it does so with such open and comforting arms saying you can do it. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be a hard and very frustrating at times and you may smash a controller or two, but you can do this. And once you mastered the base mechanics, this game offers another challenge and another one, and then its final one to put the player to the ultimate test. Unlike other games that do have a final hardest level, most of the time it's put in there just for fun. But Celeste crafts each level with a purpose and sense of passion for gamers of all types, people who just want a surface level hard video game with an amazing story, and for those of you who want to fight insanity. But no matter what, I promise you, you will have an amazing experience by doing so, while the game pushes you along its many difficult paths little by little, and as you just get better and better and overcome the fear that you once had of facing this game, even just facing its very first level.